Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7. My name is McGlynn. First up tonight, our Ukraine update on day 495 of the Russian invasion. In her regular operational update, Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister, Hanna Maliar, has restated that Ukraine is making incremental gains in both the east and the south, and said that 37.4 square kilometres of territory has been reclaimed. An international office to investigate Russia's invasion of Ukraine opened on Monday in The Hague, in the first step towards a possible tribunal for Moscow's leadership. It will investigate and gather evidence in a move seen as an interim step before the creation of a special tribunal that could bring Kremlin officials to justice for starting the Ukraine war. Speaking in The Hague, senior Ukrainian prosecutor Andrea Kostin said Vladimir Putin's recent comments about payments to the Wagner Group was like direct evidence that Wagner's mercenaries were an illegal arm of the Russian army in the war. Andrei Kartapolov, head of the State Duma's Defense Committee, has said that there is no need for a further mobilization in Russia to replace Wagner fighters. Suspilny, Ukraine's state broadcaster, reports that a residential building in Sumy has been damaged by a drone strike. The Russian-imposed leader in occupied Kherson, Andrei Alexenko, has stated that the damage to the Chongar Bridge linking Kherson and Crimea, struck by Ukrainian forces in June, has been repaired. The Financial Times is reporting that the EU is considering allowing a Russian bank under sanctions to carve out a subsidiary that would reconnect to the global financial network to safeguard the Black Sea grain deal, which allows Ukraine to export food to global markets. NATO's Secretary-General, Jens Stoltenberg, is meeting with Foreign Secretary James Cleverly today. A senior Russian propagandist has accused Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin of going off the rails after receiving billions in funding from the Kremlin, as Moscow's new narrative takes shape following Wagner's attempted mutiny. 4 civilians were injured by Russian shelling on a residential area of the southern city of Kherson, the Prosecutor General's office said on Sunday. Award-winning Ukrainian writer and war crimes researcher Victoria Amelina, 37, has died after being wounded in the Russian missile strike on the Ria Pizza restaurant in Kramatorsk. In Odessa on Sunday, President Volodymyr Zelensky paid tribute to those serving in the Navy on Ukrainian Navy Day. Poland's Interior Minister, Mariusz Kaminski, has said that Poland will send 500 police officers to its border with Belarus in response to concerns over the Wagner Group's presence in Belarus. Energy giants Total Energies and Shell have defended activities linked to Russia after a critical report by campaign group Global Witness into their trading in natural gas despite the war in Ukraine. On to our top story tonight. Ahead of the milestone 75th anniversary of the NHS on Wednesday, NHS breast cancer surgeon and SNP MP Dr Philippa Whitford said, "The NHS is not safe at the mercy of financially damaging Westminster decisions," pointing to the catastrophic impact of Brexit, 13 years of UK government cuts and underfunding, and the creeping privatisation and fragmentation of the NHS in England, which, she said, the pro-Brexit Labour Party are refusing to reverse. A report from the King's Fund health think tank last week, which focused predominantly on data from the NHS in England, found the UK underperforms significantly on tackling its biggest killer diseases because the NHS has been weakened by years of Tory underinvestment. The study of 19 wealthy nations concluded Britain achieves below-average health outcomes because it spends a below-average amount for every person in healthcare. The King's Fund warns the NHS trails behind its international cousins on some key markers of a good healthcare system. The study found life expectancy in the UK is second worst among the 19 countries studied. In addition, UK survival rates for the most commonly occurring cancers are below average. People who have heart attacks or strokes are more likely to die. The number of hospital beds is the second smallest. There are fewer CT and MRI scanners, and access to NHS dental care is worryingly threadbare. The research did, however, show that the public service model of the NHS scored well on low administrative costs and not saddling patients with medical debt. The recommendation was not to keep talking about changing the model, but about providing sufficient funding. Research by the Newfield Trust, published in November, found Brexit had worsened the UK's shortage of doctors in key areas of care and led to more than 4,000 European doctors choosing not to work in the NHS. A poll published today has found that 7 in 10 people believe charges for NHS care in England will creep in over the next decade, ending the health service's record of being free at the point of use. One of the NHS's key founding principles from 1948 is in peril. 71% of the public believe, according to the survey carried out for the Health Foundation, the 75th anniversary this week. Commenting, NHS breast cancer surgeon and SNP MP Dr. Philippa Whitford said, "As we celebrate the 75th anniversary of NHS Scotland, it's essential that we face up to the damage of catastrophic Westminster policies, and the risk that remaining under Westminster control could prevent our NHS surviving for another 75 years. While the NHS in England has faced creeping privatisation and fragmentation, NHS Scotland remains a unified public service under the SNP Scottish Government, with greater health and social funding and higher levels of NHS staffing. The Scottish Government has done more to invest in the well-being of everyone in Scotland throughout the course of their lives, from the baby box, which welcomes our newborns, free prescriptions, eye tests, and progress towards free dentistry, to help us manage our health, to free personal care, which allows older people to live with dignity." A Cabinet Office investigation has found that Sue Gray had apparently breached the Civil Service Code by discussing a job with Sir Keir Starmer without telling her Whitehall bosses. Jeremy Quinn, a Cabinet Office Minister, said a civil inquiry found a prima facie breach of the code about outside interests to be clear and transparent, meaning an apparent contravention of the rules based on the first impressions. Gray was approached by the Labour leader about a possible role in October of 2022 and had a conversation about it on the phone. She told the Cabinet Office about this in March of 2023 when it became public that she might be offered a job as Starmer's Chief of Staff, and subsequently resigned on deciding to take the position. Last week, the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments said it had been given no evidence that Gray breached the code, although this was a matter for the government to decide. Quinn said in a written ministerial statement on Monday that the civil service findings suggested a breach had occurred. He said individuals must declare all relevant outside interests to their line manager as soon as they arose. The policy advises that individuals should err on the side of caution when considering what to declare, but the onus is on the individual to consider what might be relevant and declare it. A Whitehall source said the Cabinet Office had advised against making public the finding that Sue Gray had breached the code because staffing matters should be kept confidential, but that ministers had made a political decision to put it out into the public domain. The Competition and Markets Authority has found that drivers are paying more for petrol and diesel than before the COVID pandemic because of weakened competition. The CMA said that due to a decision by the traditional price leaders to compete less hard, prices had risen since 2019. The CMA study found that the average annual supermarket fuel margins had increased significantly from 2019 to 2022, representing a 6 pence a litre increase, equivalent to £900 million in extra costs in 2022. Retailers will now be forced by law to provide live pricing data, allowing drivers to more easily shop around for the best deals. In May, the CMA said it had found evidence that retailers were putting up petrol and diesel prices to unnecessarily high levels, and that it would speak to supermarkets, which have traditionally offered the lowest prices. In concluding a study into the road fuel market, the CMA said consumers were paying generally higher prices than 4 years ago, and noted that competition has been significantly weaker on diesel than on petrol. The remarks came at the end of a year-long investigation in which the watchdog studied margins in the fuel market, where prices last year rose to record levels as Russia's invasion of Ukraine upended commodity markets. The CMA said consumers in different areas were paying significantly more for fuel than others, and that customers without access to fuel cards paid far more to buy fuel on the motorway than off it. To address these issues, the watchdog suggested the launch of an open data fuel finder scheme and a separate fuel monitoring body within the UK government. In response, the UK government immediately said it would adopt the measure to force retailers to provide live price information to third parties, paving the way for them to create price comparison apps and websites. SNP MSP Stuart McGlynn, who has been spearheading a fair fuel campaign in his constituency, said, "Today's report shows clearly that a lack of easily accessible information has resulted in consumers paying overinflated prices for their fuel. The UK government has presided over this scandal for too long. They must urgently implement the recommendations and finally ensure fair fuel prices for the public." Rishi Sunak is facing demands from red wall Conservative MPs to slash the number of overseas care workers, foreign students and refugees allowed into the UK in time for the next election. The MPs from the 2017 and 2019 intake, who call themselves the New Conservatives, have issued a 12-point plan to cut net migration to the UK from 606,000 to 226,000 before the end of 2024. They include the Tory party deputy chair, Lee Anderson, the backbencher Miriam Cates, and the Ipswich MP Tom Hunt, all usually considered to be loyal to the Prime Minister. Measures put forward by the New Conservatives include closing temporary schemes that grant eligibility for worker visas to care workers and senior care workers in order to reduce long-term inward migration by 82,000. They also propose stopping graduating overseas students from staying on in the UK for up to 2 years to find work, and extending the closure of the student dependent route that allows a student's family members to access the jobs market. These two measures could cut LTIM by 125,000, the report claims. The MPs advocate only allowing in skilled workers who earn £38,000 a year or more. This could reduce long-term inward migration by 54,000 people a year, they claim. The measures have been criticised by experts for being overly simplistic and for being potentially damaging to the economy. The policy proposals in the New Conservatives report does not take into account any positive benefits of immigration to the UK. Both the Conservatives and Labour have put forward policies to bring down migration into the UK. Reducing immigration to the UK could create a shortage of care workers and cause a loss of income to universities and the UK itself economy from overseas students. Commenting, SNP Home Affairs spokesperson Alison Thewlis MP said, "These draconian Tory plans are a threat to Scotland's economy, NHS and public services, and they show exactly why Scotland needs the full powers of independence. Scotland's NHS, care sector and key industries are already facing staffing shortages because of Brexit, and these reckless plans to slash the number of overseas carers, nurses and workers would do even more damage to Scotland's economy and public services. The Tories and pro-Brexit Labour Party are both engaged in a toxic race to the bottom on migration, inflicting long-term damage to our NHS and economy by ending EU membership and free movement, and introducing hostile policies that go against Scotland's interests." The head of the International Energy Agency has said energy prices may spike again this winter, forcing government to subsidise bills just days after state support for UK households fell away. Fatih Birol said a rapid improvement in the Chinese economy, coupled with a harsh winter, could put pressure on gas supplies and push up bills for consumers. He said the agency cannot rule out another spike in gas prices this winter, which would mirror last year when a surge in wholesale costs as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, fed through to high consumer bills. On the Today programme, Emma Pinchbeck, the Chief Executive of Energy UK, said the long-term solution to high bills is to invest in renewables and energy efficiency to make sure we're not reliant on volatile international gas. She said that investment in more infrastructure in renewables and energy efficiency and alternative technologies would deliver cheaper bills in the long run, adding this is why it's so important that the UK moves quickly, particularly when faced with increased international competition for renewable technologies. The SNP responded by calling for the UK government to start planning ahead for the winter freeze now. SNP Energy spokesperson Alan Brown MP said, Rishi Sunak must start planning ahead for the winter freeze now and back SNP calls to introduce an energy bill rebate for households this autumn. The UK government must fix the roof while the sun is shining and plan ahead to prevent families having to choose between heating and eating this winter, particularly given the damaging impact sky-high mortgage rates and rents will also have on household budgets. Scotland is an energy-rich country. It's ludicrous that, having taken hundreds of billions from our energy wealth, Westminster is forcing Scots to pay through the nose for a resource we have in plenty, and has got us into this mess by failing to properly invest in renewable energy. Ofcom has launched investigations into GB News and Talk TV as the media regulator struggles to handle how right-wing television channels are employing serving politicians as presenters. GB News and Talk TV's willingness to push opinionated television news in a manner not traditionally seen on television in the UK has left Ofcom playing catch-up, trying to apply a broadcast code written in a different era. UK broadcast rules ban serving politicians from acting as news presenters on television and radio stations, unless there are exceptional circumstances. However, politicians are allowed to host current affairs discussions, with the line between the two increasingly hard to distinguish. Any change to the rules could be politically contentious, given the main beneficiaries of the new channels have been Conservative MPs. Ofcom said it had received 40 complaints objecting to the former Conservative Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg acting as a newsreader on a breaking news story after a jury found Donald Trump sexually abused a journalist. The regulator is also investigating whether Rupert Murdoch's Talk TV broke rules requiring news and current affairs to be presented with due impartiality, over comments by the Alba Party leader Alex Salmond in April. Mr Salmond hosted a discussion on whether the SNP was holding back the course of independence. GB News is already being investigated by Ofcom after it allowed the serving Tory MP Esther McIvie and Philip Davies to interview the Conservative Chancellor Jeremy Hunt about his spending plans. The regulator is considering whether the MPs, who are a married couple and each earned about £1,000 per episode of the show, included a broad range of views when interviewing one of their colleagues. The race to secure lucrative presenting jobs on the new channels has benefited several sitting Tory MPs. Other MPs with shows include GB News' Lee Anderson, who recently filmed a promotional video for his broadcast on the roof of Parliament, and Talk TV's Nadine Dorries, who has indicated that she intends to step down as MP. Israel has launched a major aerial and ground offensive into the West Bank city of Jenin, its biggest military operation in the Palestinian territory in years, in what it describes as an extensive counter-terrorism effort. At least 8 Palestinians were killed and 50 were injured, 10 seriously in the attack that began at about 1 a.m. on Monday, and the death toll is likely to rise, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. At least 10 drone strikes were launched on buildings as a brigade of Israeli troops between 1,000 and 2,000 soldiers, backed by armoured bulldozers and snipers on rooftops, entered the city and its refugee camp. They were met with resistance by Palestinian fighters returning fire. Israel said it informed the White House of its plans before launching its attack. A spokesperson for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called the operation a new war crime against our defenceless people, while in Gaza, Hamas called on young men in the West Bank to join the fight. Lynn Hastings, the UN's resident humanitarian coordinator, described her alarm at the scale of Israeli forces' operation in Jenin. In a tweet, she said airstrikes were used in the densely populated refugee camp. Several dead and critically wounded, and access to all injured must be ensured. In a joint statement, the Israel Defense Forces and the Domestic Intelligence Service, Shin Bet, said they had attacked a command centre in the Jenin refugee camp that was used by local militant groups. Images from inside Jenin showed Palestinian fighters mobilising on the streets as gun battles and explosions continued into this morning. At a checkpoint on the outskirts of the city, the sound of increasingly heavy gun battles and aircraft overhead could be heard as the day wore on. In an escalation of the violence, Israel carried out an airstrike near a mosque in the city that it claimed was being used by Palestinian gunmen to target Israeli forces. The incursion into Jenin is the first since the 2002 Battle of Jenin during the Second Intifada, which more than 50 Palestinians and 23 Israeli soldiers were killed in over a week of fighting, including 13 Israeli soldiers in a single incident. Electricity was cut off in some parts of Jenin, and military bulldozers were ploughing through narrow streets, another reminder of Israel's incursions during the last uprising. Palestine and neighbouring Jordan condemned the violence. The camp on the outskirts of the northern West Bank city was set up in the 1950s, and the ghetto-like area, home to about 11,000 people, has long been viewed as a centre of Palestinian armed resistance, but denounced as a breeding ground of terrorists by Israel. The Scottish Government has accepted the 6% pay increase for senior NHS staff recommended by the Independent Doctors and Dentists Pay Review Body. The 6% pay uplift will be applied to all senior NHS medical and dental staffing grades, and the Scottish Government, BMA Scotland and other relevant bodies all participated and provided evidence to the DDRB to allow them to make their independent recommendations. The award will mean NHS Scotland senior medical and dental staff, general medical practitioners and general dental practitioners will receive a 6% pay increase for this year, backdated to the 1st of April 2023. For a consultant, this means a rise of £5,488 at the bottom of the pay scale and £7,292 at the top. This year's award builds on the 4.5% pay uplift awarded in 2022. This means staff have received a minimum 10.5% pay increase over the last 2 years, which equates to a new £9,428 rise for a new consultant and a £12,528 for a consultant at the top of their pay scale. Health Secretary Michael Matheson said, "The NHS has faced substantial challenges over the last few years, and staff have been working tirelessly to continue to provide care while under increased pressure. This award demonstrates the value we have for all our senior medical and dental staff and the invaluable contribution they make. It's crucial that we continue to not only recruit and build our future NHS workforce, but also retain expertise within, and this award will mean our staff remain the best paid in the UK, and an overall minimum increase of 10.5% over the past 2 years. We continue to negotiate with BMA Scotland Junior Doctors Committee, and we hope to reach a separate pay settlement for 2023 to 2024 for junior doctors soon." This morning, First Minister Humza Yousaf chaired a meeting of the Scottish Government Resilience Committee, ahead of potential industrial action by junior doctors later this month. The Scottish Government Resilience Room was to be activated for the meeting to discuss the significant impact a junior doctor strike would have on patients, and to explore what mitigations can be put in place while continuing the efforts to reach a pay settlement with junior doctors. A partnership to support cancer patients and their families to deal with the financial, emotional and physical health effects of the disease is to be extended with a further investment of £9 million. The programme looks to ensure that everyone affected by cancer in Scotland has access to a specialist key support worker. This means that clinicians have more time to offer direct medical and clinical support to patients. Over the next 3 years, it is anticipated that there will be a gradual increase in access to the service, with a minimum of 14,000 new cancer diagnoses accessing it each year. The Scottish Government has been working in partnership with McGlynn Cancer Support to improve the service offered to those affected by cancer through the Transforming Cancer Care programme. This partnership, the first of its kind in the UK, began under the 2016 Cancer Strategy and has seen £18 million invested to date. The Scottish Government has agreed to continue the partnership and provide an additional 3 years of funding for the Improving the Cancer Journey services. Each partner will invest an additional £4.5 million. Making the announcement ahead of a visit to NHS Forth Valley to celebrate the NHS 75th anniversary, First Minister Humza Yousaf said, "Our recently published Cancer Strategy and Action Plan places an emphasis on person-centred care for all and supporting the mental health of cancer patients and their families. We have committed to launch the final Improving the Cancer Journey service in partnership with McGlynn over the next 3 years. We will also commit to spreading this successful model to all areas in Scotland over the coming year. This will see an additional £9 million of joint investment and ensure that everyone diagnosed with cancer in Scotland has access to a key support worker. It will be of great benefit to patients while also easing pressure on the NHS by freeing up clinicians." The eyes of the world will be on Scotland in August as more than 2,000 elite cyclists and paracyclists arrive from over 100 countries for the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships. This event, hosted in Glasgow, with events taking place across the country, will bring 13 World Championships together in one place for the first time. Taking place from the 3rd to the 13th of August, cyclists will compete for more than 190 coveted UCI World Championship rainbow jerseys. A wide array of world-class action will be on a show over the 11 days, including the track sprints and mountain bike downhill races to BMX freestyle and indoor cycling acrobatics. The UCI Cycling World Championships will be delivered in collaboration between the UCI, Scottish Government, Glasgow City Council, UK Sport, British Cycling, Glasgow Life and Visit Scotland, with its Event Scotland team through 2023 Cycling World Championships Limited. There are many free events and tickets are still available for the ticketed events from as little as £8, with concessions from £5. Culture Minister Christina McKelvey said, "Scotland will proudly host the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships in August, with communities and businesses ready to provide a warm welcome to people from around the world. This historic event will showcase our breathtaking scenery and support tourism, hospitality and other businesses across our cities, towns and villages, helping drive economic benefits across Scotland. We are already delivering a range of community events and activities, and we have improved infrastructure across the country through the Cycling Facilities Fund and the Community Cycling Fund. We hope this event will help inspire a new generation to cycle, helping more people to benefit from the mental and physical health benefits it can bring. This can also be a great opportunity to promote the broader benefits of active travel for us all, which helps reduce emissions." Well, that's it for this evening. But before I go, I just want to remind you that here at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. So, to everyone who has donated, and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. We have set ourselves a target of adding 10,000 new subscribers to enable us to employ staff to make more programmes. Good night, and thank you for watching.